and it is my pleasure today to introduce our two speakers who are going to talk to us about expenditures and revenue and money issues related to the proposed City of St. George. So our speakers today are Dr. James Richardson, who is the John Ray Alumni Professor of Economics and Public Administration at the Brpc College of Business Administration at LSU. He also served as Director of the Public Administration Institute, Chairman of the LSU Department of Economics, Acting Dean of the College of Business Administration, and Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at LSU. He specializes in regional forecasting, state and local tax policy, economic development, and public policy. And since 1987, Dr. Richardson has served as a private economist on the Revenue Estimating Conference, and he was co-chair of the Task Force for Structural Change in Budget and Tax Policy. Our second speaker is Dr. Jared Lorenz, who is Associate Professor and Director of the Public Administration Institute in the Brpc College of Business at LSU. His scholarly research focuses primarily on public sector human resource management, and his research has been published in a variety of academic outlets. He is co-author of the widely adopted textbook, Public Personnel Management, Context and Strategies. Dr. Lorenz has served on numerous university and professional association service committees, and he recently finished a 3-year term on the Commission on Peer Review and Accreditation for the Network of Schools of Public Policy Affairs and Administrations. Please welcome both of our speakers, Dr. Richardson and Dr. Lorenz. And I almost forgot, just a reminder on housekeeping matters. We've asked our speakers to, when we get to the questions, to please repeat the questions so everybody can hear them. And questions may only be asked by members of the press club and members of the working media.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and to let you know that this was a study that I initially talked with Gerald Bissell. We talked about it, and then a group of private citizens asked if they would fund the study, so exactly that's the funding of the study. And we are putting this together, and it's an important issue, and it's an important issue throughout the parish about the proposed city of St. George. And it's an important issue for a lot of reasons, but first, if you kind of look at the map of the city, look at where people are employed, where people live, where people interact with each other. There's a great deal of connectivity and between where the proposed city of St. George is and the city of Baton Rouge and the rest of the parish. So we want to make sure we are aware of that. And it's critical, and this is a very critical issue. It's critical for the citizens who live in that area. It's critical for others who do not live in that area in terms of exactly what happens if indeed there is this annexation or this city, or this city becomes a reality. And I indicate that I think the mayor and the Metro Council have a fiduciary responsibility to appreciate the possibility that if indeed there is the new city is created. I think that's an important issue for them. So we went through, and they had obviously done their study about the taxes that they might be expected to get, the expenditures that they would be expected to incur if indeed they do become that proposed city or that city. And we went down and we looked at the numbers, and this I think is where on the tax side we talked to the finance department with the city parish. They actually have their exact numbers about what was collected in terms of sales taxes, what was collected in terms of occupational license taxes in that particular area that is to be the city of St. George. So we got those numbers from them, and then we made estimates about other numbers dealing with premium taxes, with licenses, permits, and other things like that. And what we came out with as we looked at the numbers, based on that information, we had that they're going to get about $45.8 million in tax receipts, as opposed to what they had projected, about $58.4 million, a difference of about $12 million. So we saw that there was a difference there in terms of that. And I think that's important. And then we note, technically then, unless you're planning to raise revenue, which I don't think that's been suggested, but if you're planning to raise taxes, if you're not, then your budget constraint is essentially $45.8 million. That's how much you have to spend, period. And the question is, how much spending do you have? At least as of right now, in that area, being done by the current governmental agencies, the parish of East Van Nuys Parish. So we then look at, okay, what we want to do is make a comparison. What numbers or what expenditures would we expect them to have? Again, doing about what they're doing right now in terms of services. Noting that they already have a fire district, noting that there is the sheriff that does provide police activity during the unincorporated areas right now. Taking away those situations, noting that they still will remain at least within the parish in terms of trash collection and things of that nature. So trying to, again, make it just as fair as we can in terms of what expenditures will they incur as a separate entity, taking away those that we expect to be continued as they are right now. And what we did is we looked at the budget of the city of Baton Rouge. We looked at what now we expend as a city of Baton Rouge in unincorporated area. And we came out with the total, just looking at those numbers by themselves, of about $47 million. Plus we add the fact of $4 million for that they are suggesting there will be additional payments to the sheriff. So we suggested that their expenditures would be about $51 million. $51 million, and this is compared to their suggested number of about $33.9 million. So there's a big difference there. Also, that 51 compared to their tax collection of about $45 to $46 million. So there are some discrepancies there we have to be concerned about. And then what we did then is, okay, and Jerry's going to take over here. We're going to start to say, okay, those are numbers that we have kind of mined from the existing data here in this parish. Now, how does this compare to some of the other places around this country in terms of what they spend as cities, and also cities that St. George suggested were comparable cities to them, at least in their own analysis. So Jerry's going to hand on that.
Thank you. As Jim hinted, one of the areas that we looked at was projected expenditures that we thought might likely within the area of proposed city of St. George. In order to validate those estimates that we had of roughly $51 million, we took the list of the cities that were already published by proponents of the city as comparable cities, and essentially said what would happen if we took the same population, the same square amount estimates, and applied those to those cities, and how does that comport with the estimates that we have? So the first question we said is, what would comparable cities spend annually if their population matched that proposed city of St. George? So using an 86,000 resident estimate, we looked at the cities of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Gulfport, Mississippi. We'll provide this later if you look at the documentation. Jones Creek, Georgia, Kenner, Louisiana, Fayetteville, and Wilmington, North Carolina as well. So these are all cities that were previously looked at as comparable cities with the proponents of the city of St. George. What we found is if you look at the average spending, so essentially what we did is we said, all right, what would comparable cities spend if they had the same population as the city of St. George, taking their per capita spending rates from their own expenditure, their own annual reports for those cities. And we found that on average, those cities that were used for comparison spend roughly about $58 million. Their expenditures, if they were the city of St. George, would be roughly $58 million. If we take out the largest and the smallest cities in that maze and kind of trim the extremes, that number goes down to approximately 51.6 million. So if we look at per capita spending and kind of looking at per capita spending for those cities within a population similar size of St. George, we estimate that their spending would be roughly 52 million compared to the 51 million that we projected which corresponds pretty closely there. The next question we looked at, we said, all right, we can compare on the basis of population, but let's also compare on the basis of size. So the next question we looked at was, what would comparable cities spend annually if their geographic area matched that of the proposed city of St. George? So we used as a basis 60 square miles. This estimate was a little bit different in that it came out a little bit higher. The overall average, including kind of the extreme cities in these cases of comparable cities, was $90 million would be the estimated expenditures if you held spending constant. If we take off Sugar Land, Texas, and Fayetteville, Arkansas, which were the two extreme examples of those comparisons, it gets knocked down to $65 million approximately. So if you're looking at, trying to take the estimate that we have of $51 million and seeing whether or not it comports with comparable cities, it's fairly close in that sense. We weren't terribly off there. Some key observations that we had essentially is that our estimate of roughly $51.6 million is comparable on an expenditure basis, looking at comparable cities, as I said before, of having expenses of roughly $52 million. If you're looking at on a population basis, it's $65 million on a square mile basis. Some concluding observations that we had, and I'll hand it back over to Jim after this, is that initially the estimates that the proponents of the city of St. George provided were basically taking a population estimate of 19.2% and then applying that to both the revenues that were coming in as well as expenditures. One of the things that we thought should point out is that one, population estimates, although they are slightly correlated, not slightly, but correlated with expenditures and revenues, there's not a perfect correlation, so there is variation in many cases in those areas. If you start looking at potential revenues, which we did using city parish data, and projected expenditures looking at comparable cities, we think those estimates were a little on the high side in terms of revenues, and then on the light side in terms of expenditures, on the low side in terms of likely expenditures. One of the other areas that we looked at is the proponents reference the fact that there would be considerable cost savings due to contracting out and outsourcing. And if you look at the broader literature on contracting, essentially, and this is one of those areas that we like to define as kind of known unknowns. So the fact that you know that you can contract out and outsourcing is always an option. What's unknown is whether or not it costs you more or less, and what's unknown is if you're going to be paying for greater or lower quality service and how you actually realize those savings. Typically within the contracting literature, it's mixed. So there are cases where cities have done well with contracting. There are other cases where contracting for extremely complex services becomes much more complicated in a sense of what might cost you less in the initial run comes out higher on the other side. So with that, I am going to hand it back over to you for questions.
I think if we try to say, okay, what were we looking at? And first, I think, one, this is an important issue. It's certainly very important for the people who live in the area that is proposed St. George area. It's also important for people who live outside of that area because the two cities are connected. Their economic and social connections are real. If you look at where people are employed, where people drive every day, there are obviously these things are not separate cities at all. So in that sense, we all have a stake in this. Secondly, I think if you look at the numbers on the revenue side, they put out their numbers originally. I think they did it on estimates, on population estimates and things of that nature. We went and looked at the actual numbers from the East Baton Rouge Parish and City of Baton Rouge, their budget statements. And so I feel very confident that our number of $45.8 million is very good compared to what they had suggested was about $58 million. Then on the expenditure side, again, we're looking at the budget of East Baton Rouge Parish and the City of Baton Rouge, going down each of the separate categories of spending, assigning, and this is an estimate, assigning how much of that will be in the district or the area that will be the city of St. George. We came out with a number of about $47 million. We added to that number the $4 million they stated about adding for additional police protection. That's how we came up with our $51 million compared to what they had was $33.9 million. And one of the things we thought in terms of, okay, these are both estimates. We can argue about estimates all we want to. But then, do we have comparables? Do we have some like other cities do? So we went out to the cities, this is what Jerry talked about, we went out to cities that they mentioned in their study. We, again, tried to very carefully take out public safety, since that was a separate entity here. We took out certain other items that we felt would be what they would automatically get from the parish government. And again, we made those comparisons, and once more you noted that in each case, the expenditures that would be necessary to match what the other cities do would be considerably more than what revenues they would have coming in. So we felt this information is very important for the people who live in St. George, very important for the people who live in the entire parish. So that's what we put out there, and I think we'd be happy to answer questions. As I said, the whole idea is this was saying we need the best numbers possible if we're making major decisions about government structure. We need to look at the information carefully. We need to appreciate exactly what it's saying to us. And then you have the questions. It doesn't answer the question about is this a good idea or a bad idea. It merely answers the question, if we do it, this is what to expect. This is what to expect if something were to, if we decide we wanted to do it. And that's a decision, obviously, that people of that area have to make, plus perhaps people within other parts of the parish as well. So anyway, that's where we stand right now, and we'll be happy to answer questions for you. And this, our summary here is going to be posted on the Baton Rouge Press Club website. So it will be available for you to see and to observe. And Jared and I'll take your questions.
Why are the two sites coming up with different numbers?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Why are you coming up with different numbers than their numbers?
Well, I think I can say we came up with numbers that we feel represent correctly the services, the cost of the services there, plus the taxes. I feel very good about the numbers we come up with. Again, I cannot, they came up with numbers based on what they did. I think, as we said, they're estimates. I feel very good about the estimates we made about being reflecting the reality of the situation.
Since your presentation speaks to the viability of the program, can you speak to the socio-demographic shifts? We see a white flight to Central Parish. Will this create this other kind of flight that is now taking back Rouge property and moving it away to another area with a different definition? The reason I'm speaking to that is when the split first came about, the national addressed it as the perfect example of a community not particularly interested in diversity having the capacity to carve itself away from that. What's your point? How to bridge
Okay. I think it's simply put, the question was, by creating, if we created a city of St. George, would we create obviously a city that is going to be much less diverse in terms of that right now than the rest of the city of Baton Rouge or the rest of the parish? And does that, what implications, if any, will that have on the growth and how people see us? And first, I think we start with the fact. if the city of St. George is created, there is no doubt it will have a different racial composition than the city of Baton Rouge. There's no doubt about that. That's the situation. Now, does that mean they will actively try to maintain that? I don't believe that. Over time, it will change too. Now, will they attract whites who might be moving to Ascension? I'm not sure. I don't know about that. It's not clear to me. I think the movement to that part of the parish is for a lot of different reasons, not just race. So I would be reluctant to say that. And because you can't prove it. How other people see it, I don't know. But there is no doubt it will create initially, at first, a city with a very different population ratio from the city of Baton Rouge.
Did you see any project any differences in the remaining economics of EBR with that economic not going out? What's that? What's the question?
So the question, if I'm correct, was what are the new socio-demographic or economic characteristics of the proposed city and what's left over of the unincorporated areas, as well as the city of Baton Rouge, those boundaries wouldn't change. I can tell you it was beyond the scope of this particular study. If you look at the boundaries of the new proposed city, they're carved quite a bit differently than the prior map. Some of those areas, it's easy to basically estimate what's being taken out. So if you look at Gardier Place, that's a census-defined place where you can go on the website right now, and the Census Bureau will pull up with the racial, demographic, and economic characteristics of that area. The map also carved out other areas within the proposed city of St. George, which make it a little bit more difficult because it's hard to get accurate demographic and socioeconomic indicators for instance, an apartment complex that was strategically carved out. And so, my answer to your question was one, that wasn't included in our analysis, and two, in order to do it, it would take quite a bit of in-depth analysis to figure out, precisely what those characteristics would be. But I think that, as Jim said, it's not a secret that this area would be wider and most likely more fluid than what is left behind.
The city of St. George, city of Central, has created an inflow of higher income children, couples with children. Would St. George not possibly do the same thing? And is that really relevant to the fact that we're talking about whether or not an unincorporated part of the city should simply be incorporated? Should every citizen not have an incorporated component to live under?
In terms of the attraction, repeat, let me make sure I get it right. Okay, first, looking at Central, that they have had some success in people moving there.
I think Zachary also.
Well, and of course, Zachary's been there a long time as a city, but Central has had a movement to them since their incorporation. And then the second part was, should not every citizen have some right to some incorporation if they so want? Is that a good?
Yeah, the most minimum would be at 3 levels of police protection for citizens' rights, particularly under the recent conversation about police overstepping. So you have local and then parish and state. Of course, using battery ground originally, when Sheriff Lee said he's going to block people coming into the parish, it wasn't just the state. There was no local police force that would say that's incorrect, unconstitutional.
And I think on the first issue, I think we probably have seen over the last 20 years that there's been a lot more people moving into the southeastern part of the parish, despite not being incorporated, than what moved into Central. So I think that has gone for a lot of different reasons. Primarily economics, primarily location where jobs are and things of that nature. So I think that's happened already. Would it happening more? I would be surprised if suddenly everybody moved there for that reason alone. Now I do think the other element of this is obviously the issue that I've been talking about on that. It's a school issue. And that I don't think, and that is not resolved with this at all. Okay? I think, and then I think on the other side, should everybody have incorporated again, that's a philosophical question, which I have to leave to the philosophers to talk about. Should we, obviously, people moved there, it was unincorporated, it didn't seem to mind. So I don't know if that's really a relevant question or not.
So, Jim, speaking of schools, clearly the impetus of doing this the first time in this process of walking in a long time was concerned about schools. So now what happens to schools now? Do they ownership? If there's a school within the newly created St. George, does the ownership shift over to that, and do they have to pay back somebody? I mean, what's the economics of that?
The question, Beth asked the question about schools and what happens if indeed, let's say, this city is incorporated and indeed there is a new school district, which is not a sure thing, but could be. What happens to the schools? Are there schools there, Woodlawn, a variety of elementary schools, middle schools, and one high school? They're now owned by the East Hemisphere school system. What happens? Well, I think in the case of Central, Baker, and Zachary, I think those school buildings are probably provided to those new school systems, but we need to check all the details of that. They worked out contracts that they dealt with. So they made some, they suggested that. Now remember, within Woodlawn, high school has just been redone substantially. So there's been a major investment by all the taxpayers in the parish on that. So exactly how that would be, I assume would be a negotiated issue between the new school system and the existing school system. And how that would operate, that would be interesting. I don't think I can give you a final answer to that.
But in theory, it could cost more. You had to pay back some bond issues.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. It depends on how the bond issue, you get a bigger portion of that bond issue, but they're going to say other places got this too, and that's going to be a negotiation of lawyers and finance people.
Could you help clear up a little bit of confusion? Do we have two sets of numbers or potentially three? And the reason I ask is because the proponents referenced analysis done by the Baton Rouge Area Chamber. Are y'all's projections integrated in with theirs, or do we have two sets or three sets of numbers that have arisen? And then I'll briefly want to have a quick follow-up.
Okay. The question is, do we have two sets of numbers or three sets of numbers or whatever? Let me say, we have our set of numbers.
Which is it separate and distinct from any part?
Separate from what the chamber has done, yes.
Thank you.
And separate from obviously the city of St. George. Yeah. We compared our numbers to what the city of St. George set up with theirs.
Okay.
We did not compare. I do not know what the chamber numbers look like.
Okay. Can I have a quick follow-up then? The proponents were very condemnatorial of the chamber's assessment of the numbers. They cited things like having ignored a $50 million sales tax, starting with the wrong line on the spreadsheet. Are you at liberty to say whether there was validity to that argument, or whether or not you have knowledge also of that, or whether they would?
We have not examined those numbers. So I can't really comment.
Okay, last little question. Y'all threw out an awful lot of numbers. In the initial year, do you all's numbers show a budget surplus or deficit?
No. The question is, in the initial year, do we show a deficit or surplus?
Yes.
We show a deficit. We show that they would be spending about $51 million based on our numbers from the books in East Rouge Parish to revenue of about $45.6 or $7 million. There is about a $4 to $5 million deficit, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Lawrence, it's like on comparables. Did y'all look at, obviously there are always differences in places. Did you look at comparables in terms of the tax base and it was strictly on services, but not things like the level of property taxes in the various other cities, that sort of thing?
No, that was not included in our analysis.
And the question is that Lanny asked about, did we compare on basis of different taxes? You have to appreciate that most local governments use what tax? Property tax. We don't do that. So we're different. But that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. So it's if we use your analysis, we can only compare ourselves to Bunky.
Services are still accounted for.
I
What services, would you, can be a little bit more precise? Let me say about the ones that are accounted for, and then we go after that. Okay, obviously there is a fire district already, the St. George Fire District. They are assuming that will be maintained, and that covers them on the fire protection. In terms of police protection right now, the sheriff is of course the constitutional officer for the parish. He provides them police protection. Now the fact is, City of Baton Rouge, we have a city police force as well. They will have to have some, at least, I think constitutionally, they will need at least a police chief. They added some extra money to pay the sheriff because they thought they might need additional help. So that's the extra $4 million. So they have that built in. And then in terms of, for example, the road program that we have underway, the sewer system we have underway, the trash collection, all that is kind of covered under the parish and the city's contracts at this point. And then there are other things that happen that are bigger little things. For example, you have inspection, you have road repairs, you have a variety of things that will happen to any city that will have to be paid for. And this is why we want to look, particularly in the city of St. George, you have 60 square miles. It's quite a bit of area to take care of. Whereas if you compare like Kenner, it's about 15 square miles. So a very different set of things you have to deal with. So I think that's what you're looking at. And there are always going to be some surprises too. I think one of the elements of the St. George area, a large part of that had flood issues in August of 2016. So the issues that you have to deal with, and those just crop up real fast. We did not put that in the budget. No way, know how to put it in the budget, but you have to deal with it if you are a separate appropriate area. Then, yes, sir.
What you're saying is that the people inside St. George would get less, and therefore the people outside St. George would get more. So why would all the rules and changes be in favor of making St. George a city?
But the issue is, why shouldn't you be in favor? If St. George is going to get a little bit less, and everybody else will have more of that, you're saying, but looking at the numbers there. I mean, on the tax side, St. George will get $51 million, or pardon me, $45 million is why. Now we're saying on the expenditure side, they will have that much expenditure that they'll have to pay. Now I think the problem is then becomes the issue of the connectivity, the relationships, because for us to be prosperous, I think the city of Baton Rouge to be prosperous, you need a prosperous area of St. George. You build public services and things to make sure. I think that's the issue that will get built up. So I don't think it matters just money. I think it obviously matter a lot of other things as well. But I think from our angle, I think from the issue of looking at the city of Baton Rouge and the parish, is saying, okay, if this, how do we make this? If this is going to be an incorporated area, I think the city has to make sure, the city of Baton Rouge has to make sure it fits together well with them too. I don't think you say, well, if they don't have these services, it doesn't matter. It does matter, I think, to people here too.
On your own analysis, you have $4 million of additional police protection. If New Iberia eliminated their police force, so therefore they're covered by the sheriff. So if you eliminate that $4 million, you'll get the exact same coverage you've got now because the sheriff's responsibility had changed.
But I think New Iberia is going back to the old other system now. They did that for a while, yes. They did that experiment. I don't think they liked it. They will return to that. But there's no doubt right now, you're right. Even if they don't have the equipment, they're going to keep having the same service they have right now. I think that's going to be an interesting element, though, because the sheriff is responsible for the whole parish. He has, throughout the parish, he has things to do. He has also things like tax collection. He does. Parish-wide. He has certain things like jails. Parish-wide. He has to cover the parish in terms of patrols and things of that nature. So I mean, he can't spend all his time only on the St. George area. He has a lot of areas to cover, which he understands that fully.
I think yes.
I'm sorry.
Who is the group of private citizens that paid for this study?
The question is the private citizens pay for the study. I'm going to, there's a group put together by One Baton Rouge. Is that the right name for it? Yes. I cannot tell you the individuals involved. I do not know who they are.
And
For this study, 17.5.
17,000?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Of the comparable cities that you study, do you have a sense of how many were formed in order to create a school district? Or how many actually have school districts?
I think you have to, the question is, how many of the cities comparable were created just to have a school district? I think, and Jerry can add on this here, first, a lot of the cities have been created for many, many years. For example, Lake Charles does not have its independent school system. It is part of the Calcasieu Parish school system. We had Kenner. Kenner does not have an independent school system. They have part of the Jefferson Parish school system. You go outside the state, and there it's not clear to me. Obviously, Sandy Springs is one of the big examples people talk about. They did not create them for a school. They created that for municipal services. And this is the thing, it's different from this, trying to figure out, okay, what do we want from municipal services from the city of St. George? What do they want as citizens there that they don't have right now? That's why it's hard to evaluate it. Sandy Springs was very clear. They knew what they wanted in municipal services. And the only other city that has been created recently is Johns Creek in the same area, Fulton County in Georgia, for the same reasons. So that's the difference. Yes, sir.
You presented this results of the study other than today, and what were their reactions?
The question was, who did we present before today? You are the first people. And what is your reaction?
What's the, I know this has been written about, but what's the impact on that Rouge, on the non-St. George areas? Basically, the revenue that they're going to generate is not going to go to DPRs, to St. George, it's as simple as that.
I think that's another area that's difficult to say because when you talk about pulling out tax dollars and then evaluating its overall impact upon existing city parish operations, there are a lot of contractual agreements or legal arrangements that clearly would have to be worked out at that time. It's very difficult to say this would be the overall impact on the city. Clearly, it would be money taken away from the city that would have to be addressed. And I think it's safe to say that we're consolidated government, so our expenses are parish-wide in that sense. We don't. The parish had essentially made decisions to favor one part of the parish over the other, and it's viewed as a whole in that sense. And I think that's one of those areas where when we look at that, when it's difficult to say just because there's so many unknowns in that area.
I think, as a practical matter, if it were to occur, there will be like 3 or 4 years of negotiating. Okay, exactly what services were we offering you up there, and what were we not offering you? I think there'll be a discussion of that, and then you get really detailed, and you need all the government people involved doing that. So I think that would take a long time to work it out. Other things are very simple. For example, there is the issue of the trash collection. There's a contract, and we can rewrite that contract. There's the sewer system. It's not going to be redone. It's going to work out. There's the road system, the program which they are making our sales tax payment on. That will continue now. There may be fights over where that money is spent, and that may happen. But that's, that will be part of the political process. And I think the other element is on the longer term commitments, for example, pension issues. There'll be a discussion of that. I think the pension system believes right now that it will be about $8 to $9 billion, $8 to $9 million a year for the city of St. George to essentially buy itself out of the long-term commitments of that pension system. That's their number right now. It could be a little bit more tomorrow, or a little bit less, who knows? But it's about $8 to $9 million a year.
That's on top of the rest of this.
No, that's included, yes. That's included in the estimate, yes.
Well, is that for a finite period or in perpetuity, the 8 to 9 million a
Well,
year?
for 15 years.
Okay, thank you.
15 years. That's pretty much in perpetuity, I think. For 15 years, yes.
Yeah, all right.
So the 51 million in expenses that you're projecting, what exactly is included in that? Is that mostly like public works, or what else is in there?
The question is, what's included in the $51 million? It will include obviously general government. It will include public works, drainage, public works being also any road work that might be done that's not covered under other contracts, things of that nature. And it includes the $8 to $9 million for the payback or buyout of the pension system. It includes all those things, and I mean, I wish I could tell you it includes, we're going to work on the street Jared lives on. I can't have to be that precise.
Are there any other questions? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.